When a young man had trouble making friends growing up, he started to blame these other people for his isolation. Referring to them as insects, snails, and cockroaches, he claimed to have developed a hatred for humanity unlike any other. Behind the scenes, certain people were very supportive of his desire for bloodshed, and with that, he went past the point of no return. Over the years, many young people have come to find themselves as part of certain groups online, and while these groups all have different names, they all share the same core features. They often promote, encourage, and even assist young people in carrying out acts of violence. Many of the murders we've come to cover on this channel have taken place thanks to, at least in part, these groups. Today's subject is no exception. Arda Kucukyetim was born on May 2nd of 2006 in Eskisehir, Turkey. He lived in an apartment in Tepebasu, Eskisehir, with his parents and his younger brother. Very little of his early life is known, but it has been said by those who knew him that he was a very quiet, almost completely silent kid who struggled to make friends with anyone else. Eventually he came to go to the Eskisehir Tepebasu Sahit Murat Tuzsu's Vocational and Technical Anatolian High School. Here his teachers called him calm, quiet, and antisocial. It was said that he didn't really participate in class, never raising his hand or volunteering any information himself. While he did do and turn in his homework, he was only a moderately successful student in the end. Regardless, school staff said that he was always a good kid. He wasn't the kind of boy who would be seen fighting on campus or really using violence in any way. He didn't have a single offense on his disciplinary records. One of his teachers even said, "I have not experienced negativity with him. I have never faced him because of a disagreement. I didn't see any disrespect. He was a quiet, calm boy. We loved each other." Eventually, he started going about his schooling in an alternative sort of way. He would go to school in a more traditional sense for 2 days out of the week and then do an internship at a factory for the other 3 days. It seemed that he was doing pretty well. Arda, however, would later speak of his experience during this time very differently. He wrote, "When middle school was over, I had a bad depression. Life wasn't worth living. It didn't make sense to be a slave to this shitty system." Arda would later say that he was never on good terms with his parents and was much more close to his grandparents, but those around him were a little bit confused to hear that. His teacher said that he came from a very good family and they never got any hint that there was any violence or dysfunction going on within the household. Not only that, but they were financially doing just fine as well. However, given that Arda wasn't known to speak, it's unlikely if they would have known anything about the finer details of their relationship anyway. Still, Arda's neighbors felt the same as his teachers. They never saw anything going on. One neighbor said that they were a very clean, well-functioning family. They said of Arda and his family, "He would sit on my upper floor. They were such good boys. He was a quiet, calm boy. There was no shouting, no calling. He wasn't naughty. We never heard or saw his parents' violence against him." When they were asked if Arda had any friends, they responded with, "No, I have never seen it. I had a grandchild, for example. I couldn't let him in the house, but this kid wasn't like that. He was not someone who went out to the streets and played ball with his friends, disturbed the neighbors, or shouted. Never. He would go to school, come home from school. He was harmless but not social." Another one of his neighbors added, "We have not seen any disrespect for 13 years. Other neighbors added that, while he didn't have any friends, he did seem to be very close to his parents, saying, "He would go out with his family and come back home with his family. He was harmless. He wouldn't make a sound. When he saw me, he would say hello, but he would never chat." One problem that Arda seemed to have with his parents was the fact that they wanted him to go to a university after high school. He didn't like that they wanted an element of control over his future. He had his own ideas for what he wanted to do and who he wanted to be, but said that his father would often clash with him on these plans. He said that his father would often yell at him and call his ideas stupid, while his mother would either remain silent or even join in herself. While he protested, he said that his parents would never leave him alone unless he buckled and agreed to do whatever they wanted him to do. Arda admitted that, during some of these fights, he would blow up in anger, yelling at his dad and even threatening him. Because of that, he feared that one day he would completely snap, do something crazy, and probably end up in jail. He later wrote, "I just hate them with every part of me." After he began to show more of these violent tendencies, his parents began to grow more vigilant. They started to check his room, looking for any drugs or weaponry. Due to this, Arda said, "I don't really see them as humans, just demons to make my life insufferable." While Arda never really made friends in person, he was fairly active online and did have some people he spoke to there. While it isn't known what kind of edgy conduct he was getting into, he claimed to do all sorts of things. He told one of his friends that he would kick cats on the street, watch murder videos online, and beat other kids on their way home. He mentioned an interest in making Molotov cocktails and throwing them at different buildings as well. Sometimes he would play games online with these friends, and whenever violent acts came up, he would tell them, "I want to do these things to real people. I will do it soon." Arda, trying to justify why he would say these things, told some of these friends that his father was beating him. It's not known as to whether or not this was true, as these conversations seemed to be some of the only times that he would mention anything of the sort. His online friends felt that he was likely suffering from some sort of psychological issue. When they suggested that he just move out of the house when he graduates, Arda said that that wouldn't solve anything. He said that his depression wasn't really tied to his parents specifically, telling them, "It's more about how normal life is all suffering." More than anything, he hated the idea of how the world works. When he thought of the future, he couldn't stand the idea of the monotony that would come with a regular work life. It didn't help that he didn't really have any companionship. He would say, "I don't want to spend years in college just to work from 6 to 8 in a factory. The whole thing is a slavery scheme. Aside from that, I've also been pretty lonely." Arda felt that he would be stuck working in a factory for the rest of his life, as due to his internship, it was all he really knew. He began to dread going into work, saying online that he really didn't want to go each and every day. While he made a small amount of money there, it wasn't near enough to move out or find any real independence. It wasn't long before these feelings of hopelessness brought his mind to an even darker place. It didn't help that he said he was being bullied regularly while working this internship. He started to say, "I know that I could work somewhere else to pay rent on an apartment or something, but I'm too weak mentally and I'd rather shoot myself because I just hate the current system that we live in. I'm not going to waste my time on that." As Arda's depression grew worse, he began to show more signs of anger. However, during these bouts of rage, he would mainly take things out on himself. He would bang his head against his desk and even cut himself in fits of rage. He said that he would go out to the park every night and sit by himself, thinking of when he finally might die. When he came home, the rage would take over. He grew irritable in his daily life as well, snapping at people over the smallest noises that they might make. When it happened, his gut reaction was to punch himself in the head. He began to describe himself as a lost cause, saying, "I've really just given up at this point. I've got nothing to live for, no objective." Arda began to post on an online forum called Sanction Suicide, where he would tell people about his situation and ask for some advice. He told people that he had gone up to different high places and debated on jumping off of them, but that would never work as he had a fear of heights even when climbing upstairs. He also considered hypothermia, but that would be a very long and drawn-out process. He thought about putting himself in front of a train, saying that he was simply knocked unconscious instantly when he was hit by a car once as a kid. Still, he decided against it. He said that if he had a gun, the deed would already be done, but he didn't. Most concerning of all, he said that imagining all of these scenarios gave him a feeling of excitement. Arda did still show a glimmer of hope every now and then. He debated on going to a psychiatrist and explaining the situation to them. However, he was pessimistic that it would even work, feeling that a psychiatrist wouldn't have any reason to actually care about him. He wondered if at least the medication would help matters. However, he was worried that he would feel too drugged and become somewhat of a vegetable. He did try to see a therapist at one point, but said that their advice was stupid and didn't really do anything to help him. He wondered if it was his fault, because he didn't describe his problems in the best way, leading to them not really being able to help him out as best as they could. Eventually, he decided to give it another try and ended up getting some level of treatment for his depression, even getting medication, but he wasn't diligent with it. His attendance was spotty, and he stopped taking the medication fairly shortly after receiving it. This only made him feel like even more of a loser, saying that now he was too lazy to even die, only existing to complain and suffer. Arda came to meet another young man on Reddit, specifically a subreddit dedicated to depression. After a bit of back and forth on that platform, they moved over to Discord. Arda played a whole lot of a military game called Hearts of Iron 4 and watched a lot of videos related to it. He would rant to his friend all along the way, telling him about his hatred for people that he felt had wronged him and how much he wanted to kill them. He complained that he had never been with a girl before, although he did mention that he briefly dated a femboy and missed him. As Arda's rants only continued to grow in intensity, this friend started ignoring him and, when he got even more scary, blocked him altogether. It was in this hole that, like many other troubled young people before him, Arda began to seek some sort of purpose. Anything at all that would make it feel like his life had meaning. Of all things, it was online neo-Nazi movements that attracted him, despite being Turkish himself. His friend noticed something was up when, on Steam, he wrote, "Getting a job is Jewish," and started sharing memes about the ZOG, the Zionist-occupied government. Arda got more and more into these ideas, eventually ramping up the intensity in the summer of 23. He started finding smaller communities of like-minded kids online, kids who felt that they were stuck in very much the same rut that he was. He came to speak to one boy in particular, a boy that he said was from Eastern Europe and slightly younger than him. This boy wanted nothing more than to be a school shooter, expressing an interest in engaging in shootings all over his own country. He told Arda of his plans to buy a weapon. Arda found all of this talk to be oddly motivational. Maybe he thought this would be a way to carry out his own revenge on the society that he hated so much. Eventually, he expressed his interest in doing something similar himself. He said that he would go out and try to buy some weaponry of his own. However, he didn't really have any luck in acquiring any. He didn't have the money or the means to get anything like a gun. As he complained about this, the other boy told him that he should look into making homemade explosives. Arda really liked the idea and even went as far as seeking out and downloading some documents, illegal in a lot of countries, that would explain how to make improvised explosives. In the end, Arda didn't go with this idea either. He didn't think that he could get his hands on the material that he would need to carry out as much of a large-scale bombing as he wanted. He also worried that he would only end up blowing himself up if he put them together in his home. With guns and bombs seeming to be out of the question, Arda decided to shift his focus to more close-range oriented weapons. In July of 2024, he started to use the little money he had to buy an axe, knives, and pepper spray. He wanted to buy some material to protect himself in his attack as well, buying a helmet, some protective goggles, an assault vest, gloves, and some armor plates online to be delivered to him. He was really excited to get his hands on the armor in particular and grew excited at the idea of personalizing it all. Shortly after he got them, he pasted some stickers related to Nazism all over them, along with the SS symbol. He made drawings related to the KKK as well and used a white pen to write them on his hunting knife. Arda got into contact with his troubled friend and began to spitball ideas as to how he would carry out his attack. He decided on an area of Tepebasu where he would like to go on a rampage with his knife. Despite growing up in an Islamic culture himself, he wanted to carry out an attack on the mosque in the area. This could have been due to his ideology, or it simply could be due to the fact that a lot of people would be there and in the surrounding area. Arda also came to be interested in carrying out an attack on the Communist Party of Turkey's building specifically, also known as the TKP. He drew up a few maps and sent them to his friend, discussing how the whole thing would play out. His friend thought the plan was solid, a great idea, even. After that, he deleted all the conversations he had with his friend on both his computer and his phone. There was no turning back now. He reformatted the hard drives on his computer as well as his phone, going into full-on factory reset. Now he felt that there really was no going back. All he had wanted was a purpose, and he felt that this act of revenge would be his calling. Like many other young, lone wolf extremist killers who had inspired him along the way, Arda decided to write his manifesto before setting out on his journey to commit an attack and likely die in the process. Arda's manifesto began with a call to action. He wanted to inspire other young men in the same boat as him. In Turkish, he opened with, "Are you depressed? Tired of life? Do you hate humanity? Beautiful. This handbook will show you how to vent your hatred instead of being a League of Legends playing cute." In the writings, he described his hatred for other people in detail. He referred to other people as insects while describing mass killers as cleaners, terminology that he would use all throughout. He wrote, "I was often ostracized as a quiet person. Why? The communication with these insect swarms, because I don't want to engage with it. Humans are inherently evil beings, the most evil of which are the ones who are Jews. I divide these insects into 3 classes. Ants, or the pathetic beings. They are like normal NPCs, a Jewish person in his 40s to 50s. They become slaves to corporations and work. When they grow old, they rot in their soft beds. They are generally brainless. Snails, beings without a brain. They are generally either under the age of 18 or those above the age of 18. They usually work at a job. They have stupid behavior, like bitches and N-words. Stupid. They listen to rap, their thinking abilities are low. And cockroaches, brain-dead beings, a brainless creature regardless of age. They were born this way. Their stupid actions are at the highest level. Their thinking abilities are zero. Arda continued by trying to inspire his readers. He wrote a list of different locations that one could attack, labeling each of them by difficulty, almost as if it were all a game to him. He listed different types of areas in order from easy to nightmare difficulty. He even included a score system, offering points for each kind of weapon that the reader might use. When it came to these weapons, he mentioned a very wide variety. Continuing, he even gave advice for carrying out attacks that he didn't follow himself. He said, first and foremost, to never tell anyone about your attack. He broke this rule himself by planning the attack with his Eastern European friend and by telling some of his other friends that he wanted to kill people one day. He told his readers to read this and other similar manifestos over and over again, telling them to mentally prepare themselves for months. Most people, understandably, would have a very hard time killing another human being for no reason. Due to this, Arda felt it necessary to desensitize yourself for months on end beforehand. One of his last pieces of advice was in relation to getting caught. Showing his immaturity, he said that you should grin at the cameras and make a troll face. Speaking of himself, this is where he said that most of his dark thoughts really started at the end of middle school and beginning of high school. He wrote, "Life wasn't worth living. It didn't make sense to be a slave to this shitty system. But when a hatred of humanity was added into this depression, I found my life purpose. To wipe out as many insects as I can from the world, including myself." He filled the reader in on his plans for what he wanted to do. He stated, "I will take a cold shower and put on my clothes. I will take my equipment and either go by car or by bike. I'm going to the attack area with some transport. In a suitable place, I will put on my equipment and use my axe. I will attach my knife to my vest. Then I will attack everyone who comes my way. To resist them, I will spray pepper spray on the security." Like many others who had written manifestos before him, he added in a Q&A section as well. He answered many of the questions in the form of trolling, but a number of the questions were answered with honesty as well. When it came to what motivated him to carry out these attacks, he wrote, "A hatred of people, misanthropy." When it came to how he felt about the victims and their families, he wrote, "I hope they will be killed soon too." On the subject of what kind of society he actually wanted, he said, "A dead society." He assumed that the media would come to label him as a terrorist once the attack was over and done. He said, "Some will say ISIS, some will say PKK. The media is like a sewer, it's all Jewish-controlled anyway." On that train of thought, he blamed the Jews for most of the world's problems. He said that, from black rappers to child abusers, it had all been normalized by globalization, all of which he said was controlled by the Jews. Due to this, he felt that everyone only felt that their purpose in life was to make money and nothing else. He said that they were controlled like a circus, a common line when it comes to like-minded individuals like him online. He then said that he felt violence was the answer, ending that rant with "violence can solve almost any problem." He came to use many more calls to action within his manifesto, hoping to egg on future killers. He also used a good portion of the space to honor past killers, writing, "Today's Saints." Underneath, he wrote the names of many other mass killers. Among them were Anders Behring Breivik, Brenton Tarrant, Stephen Paddock, Timothy McVeigh, and even more. Saint is a fairly common bit of terminology that people in these circles online use to refer to other killers. You see the term go back as far as with Elliot Rodger, being called Saint Elliot shortly after his attack by other incels. Alec Manassian, one of his followers, was called Saint Alec as well. This method of referring to killers carried over to other groups too, with it becoming quite popular among prospective young killers who admire these individuals. Arda bragged that, very soon, he would be included in the list of saints. In doing so, he oddly praised Stefan Balliet, a mass killer who is generally known for wildly failing in his attack to the point of being ridiculed by even his own people. He's mainly known for setting out to kill Jews, but only succeeding in killing 2 of his own people he swore to protect. But more than that, he's known for being unable to open the gate to the synagogue he targeted and giving up. Arda wrote, "All of them have cleared dozens of insects in this world. I will be included in this list of saints, and so will you. Although Stefan Balliet was a saint, his plan failed. Luckily, he killed 2 people. However, he did add, don't waste all your ammo on trying to open a door like Balliet." Feeling that the Jews would come to label him as a terrorist and move on, he said, "Don't fall for the lies of the filthy Jewish media. It is completely a lone wolf attack." He ended by telling his readers, Go and clear out all the bugs, and make the best plan. On August 12, 2024, Arda decided that it was time to carry out his attack. Arda wrote a blog post saying that he was going to carry out a lone wolf attack, one that he hoped would inspire future generations. He set up a group on Telegram where he invited a few others. There he uploaded his own manifesto along with the writings of a few others and some publications that have only been described as extreme. Another user within the chat soon forwarded it to some other users who would come to view it. There, an announcement was made. Stream will start in a few minutes. Like many others before him, many of which who failed, he wanted to livestream his attack. He went behind a barber shop. Putting on his helmet, his tactical vest, and the sort of skull print mask that has become popular with young killers, he was ready to go out to his target location. This would be the Sahit Rustam Demirbus Park in the neighborhood of Ulonder. Unlike many killers before him, his livestream began broadcasting. The stream began with Arda aiming the camera at his face, a blank look in his eyes. He attached the camera to his vest, filming vertically. Now in an almost first-person view, he began to move forward. Members of his inner circle and those who they invited were there on Kick watching him. Arda moved toward the mosque and, through an alleyway, entered into a tea garden near it, armed with his knife, carrying his axe and pepper spray on his vest. Many people were sitting and enjoying their drinks at some outdoor patio tables as Arda approached. The stress of what he was about to do started getting to him, and he started to breathe very heavily. He scoped out several people, trying to find one that seemed to be the most open and defenseless. After a few seconds of deliberation, he lunged forward toward a man with a blue shirt and stabbed him in the lower part of his back. The man screamed out in pain, unsure of what had even happened. The people around him, surprisingly, barely reacted. If anything, they just looked confused. It seemed that none of them quite realized what had just happened. Arda began to walk away surprisingly very slowly, looking for his next target. He saw a man in a black shirt and pulled out his knife. This man saw him and began to run. Arda took chase, following him for a few moments before giving up. An old man saw him and motioned to him, completely unbothered, with a "come on, man" sort of expression. Most people still didn't assume that Arda was serious. He looked like a kid pulling a prank. He made his way over to a few old men on a park bench and made a slashing motion towards them. They stood up in a defensive stance, causing Arda to run away. He didn't want to attack anyone who might have a chance of defending themselves in the slightest. He took off running through a walkway in the park. He made his way to a main road and ran across the intersection, panting furiously along the way. Coming to a small group of people, he once again held up his knife and nervously looked left and right for a target. He chose an old man who had his back turned to him. He plunged the knife deep into his lower abdomen and once again took off running. He made his way past a small fruit stand, about to stab another person, where he heard a man yelling at him to stop. Fearing that this man may come after him, he took off sprinting behind a small building nearby and made his way out onto another street. When he did, for reasons unclear, the live stream cut out. It had only stayed up for about 2.5 minutes. He would continue to run and carry out his attack for a bit longer. The man who had been yelling at Arda just happened to be a police officer. A few locals managed to chase Arda down, tackle him to the ground, and subdue him. By then, a few cops had caught up to them. The live stream cut back in when the police took off his vest, cops looking down into the camera. Several bystanders recorded Arda's arrest as the police held him down on the ground, hands behind his back in cuffs. His attack was now all over. He was arrested immediately. By the time it was all over, Arda had stabbed and slashed 5 people, all over the age of 55. 4 of them were able to be treated at the hospital and were released pretty quickly. One of them, however, was hurt much more than the others with a slash across his neck. He was sent to the hospital in critical condition, but luckily he too was able to survive after 8 days in recovery. In the end, Arda had killed nobody. Arda was soon interrogated at the police station. Here he made the claim that his father had beaten him and left him alone at home for extended periods of time. From the very beginning, he tried to set things up as if he were mentally disturbed due to the actions of his parents. He likely thought that this would be a 2 birds, 1 stone sort of situation. 1, he would have gotten off on a much more lenient sentence if he were found to be sufficiently mentally ill. 2, he could throw his dad under the bus. Still, the police knew that the attack had all been him, so he started to blame his Eastern European friend for helping plan the attack with him. However, by the end, he took responsibility for what he had done to a degree. He told them that he carried out his attack because he hated people and wanted to make an impact. Arda was hit with 5 counts of attempted, premeditated murder and a charge of creating public panic. His trial was given a date to begin, but by all accounts he was completely screwed. He had both been caught red-handed and broadcasted the attack himself. There would be no lawyer in the world who could get him out of this one. He was facing a maximum sentence of 108 years in prison if he were to be convicted. He would get 20 years for each count of attempted murder, followed by an extra 8 for the public panic. While a local court imposed a media ban on the case for the time being, it was already all over the internet. The police tried to find out who Arda's Eastern European friend was, but with very little to nothing to go on, they were never able to identify him. It leads one to wonder if that kid ever did end up carrying out an attack of his own. They did, however, find 2 other people who had encouraged the attack within Arda's circle online. Both of them were found to be from the United States, adult members of a group called Telegram. Telegram is exactly what it sounds like, a loosely connected group of users on Telegram who organize group chats in order to promote anything from hate crimes to terrorist acts. One of the members was a 34-year-old woman named Dallas Humber from Elk Grove, California. She was found to have run one of the Telegram groups and had promoted all sorts of acts of terror all over the world, even going as far as encouraging an attack on a nuclear facility in New Jersey. She hasn't yet received her sentencing as of the making of this video, but she is likely to be facing 25 to 30 years in prison. The other member was a man named Matthew Allison, a 37-year-old guy from Boise, Idaho. He was found to have given out various bomb-making instructions and material support to people all over the world, meaning that he was very likely the source of Arda's bomb-making instructions that luckily he never used. Matthew was the leader of one of these Telegram groups as well, having taken the position after the previous leader who had gotten arrested in 2022. His sentencing also hasn't taken place, but it's safe to say that he'll likely get one similar to Dallas. Arda's own trial began on March 7, 2025. He heavily leaned into the mental health aspect of his case, saying in his opening statement that he had a hard time differentiating between fiction and reality at the time of his attack. He said that he thought he was inside of a video game. On September 24, 2025, Arda was finally sentenced after several months of back and forth. He was ultimately given 75 years and 5 months in prison. He got 4 15-year sentences for his attempted murders, with the last attempted murder being a lesser sentence of 11 years and 8 months. When it came to the charge of public panic, he was given another 3 years and 9 months on top. If Arda is to be released from prison, he would be about 95 years old when that happened. More likely, the only way he'll see another day outside of a jail cell is if he is let out early for whatever reason. Even then, it would likely be decades before he ever saw that day. Arda's story is one that has become all too common. A depressed, isolated teenager whose feelings of rejection turn into a hatred for society and ultimately a desire for revenge on a grand scale. Like many others, he felt he found his purpose in a collective of like-minded individuals online who encouraged and even supported his desire to commit violence. Without them, he may have never done what he did. And unfortunately, this is a problem that has only grown. After Arda's attack was finished, the final video of his stream was uploaded to the Telegram group where he promoted his attack in the first place. A young girl came to be invited to this chat and viewed both his manifesto and his video. She felt a surge of inspiration, providing her with motivation to carry out her own fantasies of revenge. This girl's name was Samantha Rupnow. Once again, thank you for watching my video. If you found it interesting, please give it a like, it really helps me out in the algorithm, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. These days, I have a merch store open. There you can get yourself some clothes if you have never heard of those before. They're things you put on you. If you want, go ahead and follow me on social media. If anything ever happens to the channel, or if you just need to get a hold of me for some reason, that's the easiest way to do it. I also really appreciate when people subscribe to my Patreon. There you can get videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. Channel memberships are up too, and you can get most of the same benefits there as well. Once again, this has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.